Hi, everyone. Welcome back. My name's Haley Bonsteel.
I'm Meredith Link. Today we are discussing building independence in the kitchen. So after all of our sessions, our last 9 sessions, we talked a lot about what to expect as your child grows, thought processes that occur, how feeding styles are, eating at the dinner table, how to make those things enjoyable. So now we're really getting down to the action of the kid being in the kitchen. So first and foremost, usually when we have a picky eater, one thing to remember is that kids are still learning to eat most of the time. And so until they're a little bit older, there are going to be certain things that they are just unfamiliar with. But usually this has to do with your senses. So taste, texture, smell, sound, and sight. And so there are a few different ways we can adjust each of these senses. The most important thing to remember is not to necessarily pressure them. There is a really fine line between encouragement and pressuring them to do so. So you really want to let them feel independent and have the lead in that, and you just normalize the food in general. So sometimes when it comes to, there is a little bit of a difference between a kid not really liking something or being open to it and a kid actually having different effects that come with it. So maybe if they actually do get sick or it causes a great deal of anxiety or something, then that's where we can get other healthcare professionals involved, whether it's a therapist, a feeding therapist, speech language pathologist. So there are a variety of things on that and we can do, but for the most part, when it comes to a sensitive eater, we'll focus on those 5 different senses. So when it does come to tasting, before you even, tasting would probably be the last thing that they get to. So this could even be licking it, biting it, chewing it before they even swallow it. But then there's texture. So if it's a certain texture that your child's having trouble with, you can always have them cook with it, wash it, cut it. I've had one kid who had trouble with yogurt, so we put it in a plastic bag and he would just feel it and play with it in the plastic bag. But even if they do this, they do not have to eat it in the end. That's another thing you can stress to them, that's just experimenting with it and playing with it. So a lot of times you hear people say, don't play with food, but we actually really encourage kids to play with food. It just helps get them used to the food and create a normal environment around that food too. I know it's probably not the most fun thing because you have to clean it all up, but it definitely goes to a good thing. So
Pays off for sure. Yep.
absolutely. And then there's smells. So this could just be the aromas. It could come from acids, fats, different spices, even different cooking methods. So of course, if you're going to steam something versus grill something, completely different smell, which also leads to a completely different texture too. And so even with sound, the next one down kind of plays into the texture effect. So if you're going to air fry something, maybe it's going to be a little bit more crunchy than it would be if you steam something. The sound can kind of play into the texture effect. And then there's sight. So this is the most important one of all of them because this one really does come first. It does play into factor with each of these other senses, but even them just seeing it on their plate, even if they choose not to have it, is helping normalize that food too.
And with all of these, our biggest thing is we just want to decrease their anxiety or their nervousness around the food, right? We want them to feel more and more comfortable with it because they're more and more familiar with it, right? So if you put broccoli on their plate and they're like, whoa, I don't like the sight of that. I don't like the smell of that. Of course, they're going to be very turned off by it the first couple of times it's there. But the more and more they're comfortable with the idea that mom is serving this or dad is serving this with meals, then they feel more and more confident in trying it, right? So again, the key is the exposure and just having them play with it, having them explore with it so they feel less anxious around the food.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that we like to do with our pediatric clients is a taste test game. So you really get to play with each of these textures going on whenever you do this. Basically, what you'll do is you can come with about 3-4 different foods. Personally, I've, maybe going for all new foods might kind of freak them out a little bit to try some of these things, but maybe you have like 1 or 2 new foods and 1 or 2 foods they already like to play around with. But so you'll have your foods, and then in each food group, you'll do different variations. So maybe you have carrots, for example. So you would steam them one way, you would have them raw and maybe dip them in ranch, or you would bake them and put cinnamon sugar on it. So there's different variations of each of the foods that you choose. You can even do this with your whole family too. So everyone kind of gets to rank how they like it. And this also helps the cook and the family know what to expect and what people will be more open to as well. Let's see. So these are a few tips to help independency around food. So this could even be asking them what their input could be on meals and snacks before going to the grocery store, giving your kid a task to help prepare the food. So whether it's setting the table or even all the way until loading the dishwasher, putting the dishes up, everything in between there. Giving your kid praise on their help. So, wow, this salad is delicious. You did a great job. The table looks so beautiful. This is one you kind of have to take as it goes, because some kids might actually not want you to say anything. Kind of like if they were to try broccoli and you're like, oh my gosh, you tried broccoli. I can't believe it. And then they're like, wow, I wish you didn't say that. I don't like it anymore. If they're open to this, definitely just kind of read the room for this as well. But then honoring their hunger cues. So backing it up a little bit to the first one that I named off, it's still important to remember your division of responsibilities. So you as the parent still get to decide what it is that they're having, but you can be like, okay, would you rather have mango or blueberries as your fruit for this snack? Or here's your options for the foods you can choose for your snacks or your meals, and you can pick one from this. So you can kind of give or take on how much liberation that they have around choosing what's going to be served at that mealtime.
I think a couple other things too is this is just help or basically educating them on how to create a meal, right? Making sure there's a protein there, making sure there's some kind of grain or starch, what's going to be our veggie or our fruit, right? So it kind of gives them an idea of how do I prepare a balanced meal? What do I think of when I prepare a balanced meal? So you're kind of educating them in that way. And then another thing sometimes that I recommend to my patients is giving their kid, maybe if it's an older kid, like on Wednesday nights, they get to pick dinner, right? Then a couple things here. One, they feel like they're included, right, in the process. And two, it goes back to teaching them that eating is a social thing. So maybe on Tuesday, they don't really like what's for dinner, but they know that their day is coming, right? Maybe Tuesday was their sister's favorite meal, right? And that's okay, so they know that it's not always your favorite, but it's also not always about you, and your day is coming. This is a privilege too, right there. The privilege can be taken away in terms of picking what's for dinner, but it is very beneficial in terms of making them feel included and making them interested in what's served.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is especially a great area to focus on. Really most ages as a child, but especially as right before they leave the house. This is really to kind of like practice with them, help them, maybe show them your shopping tips or the ways you feel like work best for you and your family, or share some of the recipes and things, kind of helping them prepare to take off in their own.
And have them cook the meals, right? Maybe like practice cooking dinner one night, right? Let's cook some basic staple things so you're really comfortable with cooking certain things or preparing certain things. Totally. That's very important.
Awesome. So not only honoring their hunger and fullness below, but remembering to also honor if and when they decide to eat at those meal times too. All right, so we're about to go through the stages of cooking for different ages. And what you'll see throughout these next few slides is there's actually so many different things that, yes, a 2.5-year-old can do. Now, the ability that, I guess the volume that they can do this might be a little bit lower than, of course, when you get older. But I'm also going to share another recipe at the end that you can really have most ages do as well. So you'll be surprised at this. We have a lot of different like cooking tools, utensils, things on our Lamond Nutrition Amazon storefront where you can, have certain bowls or plates or knives, cups. There's so many different utensils that can be age appropriate as well that they can start practicing with. So if you're interested in some of those, you can just, I think it's amazon.com/shop/Lamond Nutrition. So we have tons of different things that are our personal favorite. They're not our products specifically, but we just really enjoy using them. So with ages 2 to 3, this is where you can start teaching them what certain ingredients are. So, okay, go grab the flour or go grab the cherries and kind of teaching them what it even looks like. Washing and drying the produce, stirring ingredients together. Let me stop here first because I want to say that when you're doing these, it's, might not be realistic to do these all the time, every time you cook, but maybe setting aside a few times a week where you have ample time to kind of get messy, get things cooked, and have time to give them your attention, because I know this could be a little bit stressful, maybe a little annoying at times, but also I think from what Haley and I have seen, kids are, really enjoy doing these things and it is very fun to them. So even things like stirring the ingredients, things might go everywhere. That's okay. It's definitely okay. At this age, also placing things on the counter, might need to use a little step stool. I don't know what the step stool is called or the name of it, but I have seen one. It's like a little ladder to get up and then it has bars around it. So when the kid's up there, you can like close the door so they weren't to like fall over from being up that high. But I'll have to look into that name and maybe we can put it on the storefront too.
Yeah.
You can teach them the different utensils that you're using, like this is a teaspoon and this is a cup. Sprinkling things on top, like cheese on pizza or even sprinkles on their ice cream. And then squeezing things, whether they use their hands or they use little utensils for it, and then picking herbs off the stems. So this is about 4 to 5. They have a little bit more understanding of what 1 cup is or what 1 tablespoon is. So they might be able to identify that better. Greasing pans, spreading foods. So like spreading peanut butter on a piece of toast will be a little bit easier for them. Opening packages, I would say sometimes, because packages can be difficult at times still.
You're just helping them do it. You can always like help them do it to avoid like, flour going everywhere, but just helping them do it and, showing them the action. Yeah.
So when it comes to setting the table, maybe this again is something to show them, because carrying several plates over at one time, or maybe even a plate, might be a little heavy for them. So demonstrating those.
And it could just be like carrying over the napkins, right? Carrying over the spoons, it can be like broken down even simpler than what you're thinking, right? Maybe they don't have to do the elaborate table setting, right? But maybe it's just carrying over the napkins or carrying over like certain little things to set on the table.
Yeah. And there is like a dinner mat. It's like a silicone mat that of course helps clean up. It's easy to clean, but also it shows where the plate goes, where the fork goes, where the napkin goes, where the cup goes. So that helps them also learn how a table is set while doing that too. And those are on our storefront as well. And then you can see here at the bottom, stirs batter more confidently. So compared to like the slide before around 2.5, 3, it might be a little bit better mixed, or they might kind of understand what they're doing a little bit better. One thing I also want to note is that these ages are just more textbook. You know, there could be a kid that's more advanced or one that's a little bit more delayed. So that can definitely be expected. These are just very general age ranges for these tasks. All right, and so 6 to 8, this is where they start to use a little bit more utensils or do, I don't know if the appropriate word's a little bit more risky, or just more skill can come into play with this. So like peeling fruits and vegetables with a peeler.
Yeah.
Maybe even using a cheese grater, which personally I still don't like to use sometimes.
Me too.
They have certain ones that are probably easier to use. Combine foods together. So whether it's mixing your lettuce with your dressing and your croutons, they kind of have a little bit more concept of, and you know, these go together in this meal and this goes together in that meal.
Mm-hmm.
Whisking foods together, even a little bit more advanced in their whisking and stirring and mixing skills. Seasons food with herbs. So I feel like this is an age where they have also a little bit more understanding of, okay, usually with tomatoes, when we're doing Italian, we might use Italian seasoning or oregano. Or this, we might just want salt and pepper because it's already so flavorful. So they'll have a little bit more understanding there.
And you can also teach them words like a dash of this or a sprinkle, you know, like, so they understand not putting like a ton of certain thing in it. You know, they can understand things a little bit more, right? Like teaching them what a dash of salt looks like, you know, so it's the common things that you would see in recipes that maybe they would understand a little bit more now.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe even just understanding what the smell or like what it looks like. Like this is what the show looks like and smells like with tacos, or, you know, same for oregano or parsley. Could be another way to have a teaching moment. And then cut or chop with a plastic knife. So this is another great one. They have several of them online now, but even if it was just one that was, you know, like the plastic silverware you take on picnics or something, kind of get more familiar with the sizing even, because a lot of the kids' utensils might be like bigger and easier for them to use, but maybe you transition from those to like actual plastic silverware you would just dispose of. And then eventually you can lead into like the sharper things when they get a little bit older or as their skills develop.
Yeah.
They have a more accurate understanding of measuring ingredients, plating foods, and they can even help start to plan part of meals. So with your guidance, kind of like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So 9 to 12. So this is one of the areas where they can kind of get more into the gadgets, like the blender, the microwave, the toaster, the oven. Definitely still with your supervision, especially if it's hot or sharp, that could be good. But now they can even start to cook simple dishes like grilled cheese or scrambled eggs or sandwich. Usually around this age, they might not need as much help or any at all with setting the table. They can help plan a majority of the meal. They might have a better understanding. I think this kind of depends on like what their experience has been in the past and how much education they've had in the past. But
yeah,
they can also help clean up with dinner, which is a great part of
this is whenever this is when parents are really happy. They can start helping with cleaning and just doing some of the more basic tasks.
Absolutely. Let's see. Oops, did I skip a slide? Okay, so I'm going to have a recipe for you, but before we show the video clip of the recipe, I kind of want to walk through a little bit of this with you. So I broke this down. When I broke this down, I was like, oh, wow, 2.5 can really be involved in like every aspect of this recipe. So it's pretty cool. Really, here on the left, we'll have the instructions, washing hands, laying out utensils and ingredients. So it's not a lot of back and forth in the kitchen. It's like right there, they can focus on those. You can even measure each ingredient before you start mixing stuff and then realize, oh my gosh, like I accidentally did this amount with this and it's a little off. So compiling everything together, mixing it up, and then scooping it into little, I think it's about a tablespoon balls. So these are energy balls.
Mhm.
Ingredients here in a second, but this one's very quick. It makes a ton of different energy bites for several days that your family can eat on, and it lasts about 2 weeks in the refrigerator, which is nice. I personally think they taste better after like a day or even a few more days because it's called like retrograding, where the sugar kind of breaks down and makes it a little bit more glazed and almost like honey, how it's just really thick, I guess. It crystallizes. So
Yeah.
it personally tastes better.
I think this is such a good recipe too, because it is very easy for all age groups. And you can modify it a little bit very easily. Like last time, I put a little bit of coconut in there, which is a nice flavor. You can add some different nuts, or you can put, add a lot of things that you have on hand. And they're just it's a very satisfying snack, right? It's very balanced. It has some fat, it has some protein, it has a little bit of carbohydrates for energy. And so it's a very balanced and satisfying snack. So overall, it's a really good way to get kiddos involved in preparing food.
Absolutely. So here on this screen, you can see the recipe, the ingredients we're using here. It's actually different from the video we're about to show you. So for the most part, it's the same, but for example, we might use almond butter instead of peanut butter, or cherries instead of dried cranberries. So you can mix and match this, add in seeds or coconut flakes like you mentioned, Haley, to make it a little bit more tailored to their preference. And maybe each kid wants to do their own little different variation. And that's totally fine. So here.
And it can be so basic. I mean, if you don't have the flax, if you don't have the cranberries or the extras, I mean, you could just do the oats, the chocolate chips, the nut butter, the honey. I mean, it can be very basic.
Oh, yeah. That would still be so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so here's the recipe, and in the video below, we'll also have the ingredients and the measurements as well. So I will show that next.